Father Michael raised his right hand with absolute authority, interrupting the ceremony that had barely began. "Stop! Stop it now!" His voice echoed through the centuries, old walls of St. Mary Church, making all 200 guests turning on full shock. The organ stopped playing abruptly, creating a sepulchral silence that cut the air like a razor. Bride plus size, Emma Rodriguez, 29, stopped in the middle of the main corridor, covered by a red carpet that now looked like a humiliation catwalk. Her simple but elegant white dress lightly fluttered as she held the bouquet of white roses with her hands that now trembled imperceptibly. The sun's rays that entered the colorful stained glass windows raised a golden halo around them, making the scene even more dramatic and cruel. "You can't marry in this sacred church," said Father Michael, pointing straight to Emma with visible disdain and disguised disorder. "Look at you. This is the house of God, not a walking circus. His appearance is an offense in the eyes of the Lord and all the respectable faithful present at this sacred moment." The murmurs of horror spread among the guests like uncontrolled fire. Some older women covered their mouths with their hands, pretending scandal, but with their eyes shining with gossip. The groom's family, sitting on the right side in his expensive suits and designer dressed, lowered his head ashamed, some whispering with each other with expressions of total embarrassment. The children present looked confusing, not understanding why adults were being so cruel. Some people in the back took pictures discreetly with their cell phones, already imagining the headlines they would create on social networks. "Fat bride expelled from the church. Brave priest defends sacred tradition." Subtitles were practically writing alone in the minds of these people thirsty for the drama of others. Father Michael, a 55-year-old man with perfectly combed gray hair and a natural superiority stance, had been known for decades as an inflexible and traditionalist religious leader. He had grown in a rich Boston family, always occupying positions of power and prestige, never questioning his own moral authority. For him, people like Emma simply did not belong to the spaces he considered sacred and worthy. The St. Mary Church was its personal fortress for 15 years. Each ceremony was conducted under their rigid rules. Each marriage needed their prior approval. Each family needed to go through their moral sieve. He was proud to maintain high standards and had never allowed unwanted elements to profane his altar. Emma remained standing, completely motionless in the center of all that storm of judgments. It didn't cry. It didn't shout. It did not beg for understanding. It did not bow to public humiliation. He just took a deep breath, as if he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head for years. His dark eyes slowly traveled each face in the crowd, memorizing expressions, cataloging reactions, as if collecting evidence to a future court. There was something in Emma's posture that completely detached from the situation. While any normal person would be in tears or fleeing desperate, she kept an almost supernatural calm. It was as if she knew something no one else knew, as if she was following a secret script that only she had read. "Father Michael," Emma said in a surprisingly calm and controlled voice that cut the tense silence like a sharp blade, "are you absolutely sure what you want to do? Here? Now? In front of all these respectable and influential city?" There was something in the way she spoke the words, respectable and influential, an almost ironic intonation, loaded with hidden and dangerous meaning, which made the priest hesitate by half. An inexplicable chill went up his spine, but his blind arrogance was stronger than any caution instinct. "Absolute certainty. Get out of my church immediately, and take your deplorable and embarrassing situation with you. I will not allow this sacred ceremony to continue while you are here desecrating this consecrated space with your inadequate presence." Emma tilted her head slightly to the side, a small smile touching the corner of her lips. It was the kind of smile someone gives when he knows a devastating secret that can destroy lives in minutes. A smile that promised consequences that could not yet be imagined. "Interesting," she murmured, loud enough for people in the first row to clearly hear every meaning-laden word. "Very interesting indeed, Father Michael. Very revealing." Among the guests, some well-dressed people, clearly influential men and women, with suits equable to Armani and discreet but extremely expensive jewels, exchanged significant and concerned looks. They stirred uncomfortably in their seats, as if they recognized something in Emma's voice, as if they knew exactly who she was and what was about to happen. Their pale faces suggested that they were not just watching a common marriage drama. The groom David finally reacted and ran to Emma with a red face of total shame and desperate confusion. "Honey, please, let's go right now. We don't have to go through this public humiliation. We can get married elsewhere with another priest." But Emma didn't even move an inch. Her eyes remained fixed at Father Michael with a penetrating and calculating intensity, as if she were memorizing every detail of her arrogant face. as if recording every cruel word to use as future ammunition, as if calculating something very specific and extremely dangerous. "Father," said Emma, her voice now carrying a tone that no one in the church had listened before, a tone that combined silent authority with almost scary confidence. "Do you know the history of this church well? Don't you know exactly who were the greatest benefactors over the last 20 years? Who financed the renewal of the ceiling? Who donated the new organ?" Father frowned, completely confused by the sequence of seemingly random questions. "What the hell does this have to do with this embarrassing and inappropriate situation?" "It has absolutely all to do," Emma interrupted, still with that enigmatic smile that was beginning to leave several people visibly nervous and agitated, much more than you can imagine in your worst nightmares. She turned slowly, her eyes methodically walking all the guests present with the accuracy of a scanner. When their eyes found certain specific people in the crowd, people looking for real authority and genuine power, some of them discreetly waved their heads, as if they were confirming something silent and pre-planned, as soldiers receiving silent orders from his commander. Father Michael started to sweat cold without understanding exactly why. A dark, threatening spell began to grow on his chest, like a poisonous shadow. Emma kept the bouquet calmly on the first-row seat, walked with steps measured to the bridal car that was still parked at the church door, and removed an elegant black leather paste with golden fasteners. When he returned, his steps echoed in the marble with a confidence that was definitely not there 15 minutes earlier. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out the absolutely shocking truth about who Emma really was. What Father Michael had no idea was that in exactly 15 minutes his whole life would be turned upside down completely irreversibly. And Emma knew exactly every movement that was about to perform surgically. Emma returned to the altar carrying the leather paste with the same calm of who knows exactly where each piece of the board is positioned. Father Michael, still drunk on his own authority, decided that a simple humiliation would not be enough. "Look at her," he shouted, pointing to Emma as if she was an aberration. "See what happens when we have no standards, when we let anyone think they deserve to be in a sacred place." His voice echoed through the whole church, every word loaded with pure poison. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some people started taking pictures more blatantly, creating flashes that turned humiliation into a public spectacle. Father Michael smiled with sadistic satisfaction, fed by his attention and power he had about the situation. Emma opened the folder calmly and withdrew a set of documents organized into transparent folders. Her movements were accurate, almost mechanical, as if she were following a very specific protocol. When he looked up at the priest, there was a coldness there that did not exist before. "Father Michael," she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the murmurs, "before continuing this presentation, would you like to review some documents?" "Documents?" He laughed with disdain, making theatrical gestures for the congregation. "What documents could a person like you have to interest someone respectable?" The cruelty of the joke ripped nerve laughs from some people, but Emma didn't sketch any reaction. In fact, her smile got slightly broader as if every insult was exactly what she expected to hear. Among the guests, a man of dark gray suit in the third row discreetly pulled the phone and sent a quick text message. Two women elegantly dressed in the second row exchanged a worried look, and one of them whispered something in the other's ear. "The Lord mentioned that this is the house of God," Emma continued, completely ignoring the insults, "and that there are patterns to be maintained." "I fully agree. Patterns are fundamental." Father Michael frowned, confused by the direction of the conversation. "Exactly. Finally you understand. Patterns such as honesty," interrupted Emma, removing the first document from the folder. "Financial transparency, accountability to the community." Father Michael's smile began to falter slightly. "What are you talking about?" Emma did not respond directly. Instead, he walked to the first bench where the people who had nodded to her previously seated. They were clearly people of position, expensive suits, confident postures, discreet but obviously valuable jewelry. "Mr. Thompson," she said, addressing a man of about 60 with impeccably combed white hair, "how is your wife Martha? Still recovering from surgery?" The man, apparently Mr. Thompson, nodded severely. "Much better, thanks for asking." Father Michael observed this exchange with growing discomfort. "What? How do you know each other?" Emma smiled and continued to greet others by the names. "Mrs. Williams, how was the board meeting last week? Mr. Martinez, have your grandchildren started the school year?" Each compliance was answered with respect and familiarity. It was obvious that Emma knew these people very well, and more importantly, they respected her. David, the groom, looked at everything with total confusion. "Emma, I don't understand. How do you know all these people?" But Emma was still focused on Father Michael, who now sweated visibly. "Father, do you know the concept of audit, account review?" Financial investigation? What this has to do with, it's all about standards, said Emma, her voice now carrying an authority that made the air in the church to be dense. Let's talk about the last 3 years of donations of this church. Where exactly this money ended up. Father Michael paled instantly. This is confidential information. Who's confidential for? Emma removed more documents from the folder. For the donors themselves? For people who trusted their money to this institution? At this point, 3 men of dark suits rose simultaneously from different points of the church. They said nothing, just stood with serious expressions, looking straight at the altar. Father Michael looked at them and swallowed. Who are these people? Emma organized the papers carefully on the altar. They are people very interested in standards, Father Michael, just like the Lord. The church was now in absolute silence. Not even the babies cried. It was as if everyone knew instinctively that they were witnessing something much larger than a simple marriage drama. Do you know what is funny? Inma continued, his voice echoing through the silent church. The Lord has spent the last 15 minutes talking about who deserves to be in the house of God, about dignity, about moral standards. She held a specific document high. But what no one here has known is that in the last 3 years, more than $340,000 in donations have disappeared from the coffers of this church. Father Michael went white as a paper. This is a serious and unfounded accusation. Failured? Emma smiled with a coldness that made several people goosebumps. I have bank statements, transfers, personal purchases made with church money. Do you want me to start reading the details aloud? What no one in that church still knew was that Emma Rodriguez was not just a plus-size bride being humiliated. She was much more than anyone there could imagine. And in 5 minutes, the whole truth about who she really was would explode like a bomb in that sacred place. Father Michael tried to recover control of the situation, but his hands trembled visibly as he adjusted the clerical necklace. These are very serious and completely unfounded accusations. You can't believe this. This person. Inma continued to organize the documents with the accuracy of those who did it 1,000 times before. Father, would you like to explain to the congregation why did you bought a $85,000 BMW last month, with money from an account that should be intended for church maintenance? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children seemed to instinctively understand that something monumental was happening. It was a personal loan, he stammered the priest, but his voice sounded desperate now. You can't believe her, look at her. Obviously there are mental problems. At this point, one of the dark Suist men who had previously got up calmly walked to the altar. He was a tall man, about 50 years old, with a presence that commanded instant respect. Father Michael, he said in a deep voice and natural authority, my name is Detective James Harrison of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Father Michael almost passed out. FBI? But what? Why? Detective Harrison discreetly showed his identification. We have been investigating financial irregularities in this church for 6 months. Mrs. Rodriguez has been our main collaborator in this investigation. David, the groom, looked at Emma with total unbelief. Emma, do you work with the FBI? Emma finally smiled genuinely for the first time since she had entered the church. Not exactly, dear. I work for them. She turned to the congregation, and her posture changed completely. The shy, humiliated woman had disappeared, replaced by someone with a devastating professional confidence. My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I am a federal forensic auditor specializing in religious financial crimes. In the last 8 months, I have investigated this church and at least 12 in the region on suspicion of misappropriation and money laundering. The murmurs exploded through the church as an avalanche. People turned to each other, trying to process the information. The same people who had taken pictures of the fat bride being humiliated now realized they were documenting something completely different. Mr. Thompson, the elegant man Emma had greeted, stood up. I am William Thompson, president of the Diocesan Council. Mrs. Rodriguez sought us out 3 months ago with preliminary evidence. We authorized a complete investigation. Mrs. Williams also got up. I'm Margaret Williams, the Archdiocese's financial director. When we saw the first evidence that Mrs. Rodriguez brought, we were horrified. Emma removed more documents from the folder. Father Michael, in addition to the $340,000 in diverted donations, we find that the Lord has created 4 fake bank accounts using names of deceased parishioners. The priest was now visibly sweating and shaking. This is a terrible misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Emma laughed, but not cruelty, with the cold satisfaction of a professional doing his job. You also used $50,000 from the charity fund for families in need to pay their private vacations in Hawaii. Detective Harrison got closer to the priest. Sir, I need to inform you that you have the right to remain silent. No, he shouted. Father Michael, completely losing his composure. You don't understand. I deserve these things. I dedicated my life to God, to this church, to these ungrateful people." Emma shook her head with a mix of professional sadness and personal satisfaction. "Do you know what is interesting, Father? Throughout this investigation, I found that the Lord has always had a pattern. It has always been especially cruel to people who considered lower people, people with disabilities, plus-size people like me." She walked slowly around the altar as an experienced promoter. "The Lord thought he could humiliate me here today because he assumed that I was just another vulnerable person who could intimidate, another easy victim." David still looked at Emma as if he was seeing a strange. "Emma, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me who you really were?" Emma turned to him with a look full of love, but also of sadness. "Because I needed to make sure you loved me to whom I am, not for my work or status. You went to the test, David. You stayed by my side even when you thought I was just a plus-size woman being humiliated." Detective Harrison signaled 2 other agents who were disguised among the guests. They approached Father Michael, who was now trapped behind the altar. "But the best part," Emma continued, looking straight into the priest's eyes, "is that his own arrogance was his perdition. If the Lord had simply performed marriage without all this drama, perhaps we had needed a few more months to gather enough evidence." Father Michael looked at her with pure hatred. You said all this." Emma smiled. "I simply let the Lord be exactly who the Lord is, Father Michael. A man who cannot see value in people he considers inferior. A man whose blind arrogance does not allow him to see who is really in front of him." What no person in that church still knew was that in the next 5 minutes, the full length of Father Michael's crimes would be publicly revealed. And Emma was just beginning to show the true power of an underestimated woman that had been systematically prepared for this moment. Detective Harrison gestured to his agents, and they started moving toward Father Michael, but Emma lifted her hand, asking them to wait. "In fact, detecting before prison, I would like everyone here to hear the complete extension of Father Michael's crimes. After all, he made a point of humiliating publicly. It is fair that the truth is also public." Emma turned to the congregation, now completely transformed. There was nothing more of the supposedly vulnerable woman who had entered the church. In his place was a federal professional at the height of his competence. "In the last 8 months, we have found that Father Michael not only stole donations, he has created an elaborate fraud scheme that involved at least 15 families in this community." She withdrew a red briefcase from the briefcase. "Do you remember the Santos family who lost the house last year? The priest raised $23,000 to help them. Do you know where this money ended?" Father Michael tried to interrupt. "I can explain. It was used to pay plastic surgery," Emma continued, ignoring him completely. "The priest has made a liposuction and facial lifting. Ionic, isn't it? A man who has just humbled me for my appearance." The murmurs became exclamations of revolt. Several people got up, some pointing to the priest. Emma continued, relentless. "The Rodriguez family, unknowingly with me, raised money for the cancer treatment of the 8-year-old son, $15,000 who went straight to Father Michael's personal account." "This is a lie," he shouted the priest, but his voice was broken, desperate. Detective Harrison showed a set of handcuffs. "Father, we have bank extracts, vouchers, recordings of telephone conversations. The evidence is irrefutable." But Emma was not over. "And here is my favorite part of this investigation," she said, removing a special document. "We found that Father Michael had a secret list." She unfolded the paper, showing it to the congregation. "A list of unwanted people that he considered unworthy to attend this church. Poor people, people with disabilities, plus-size people, immigrant families. The silence in the church was sepulchral. Even the babies had stopped crying. My name had been on this list 3 years ago," Emma said, "even before I first stepped on this church. Father Michael rejected me as a parishioner, based parishioning only on photos he saw on social networks." David looked at Emma with a mixture of admiration and shock. "Emma, how did you discover all this?" Emma smiled with deep satisfaction. "Because when you are systematically underestimated your whole life, you learn to be very, very good at what you do. You develop patience, precision, and an ability to plan that arrogant people can never anticipate." Mr. Thompson got up again. "Father Michael, on behalf of the Diocesan Council, I officially declare that you are deprived of all your religious functions." Mrs. Williams added, "In addition, all personal assets acquired with diverted money will be confiscated for restitution to the victims." Father Michael was now visibly panicked. "You don't understand. I built this church. I made it. These people must respect me." Emma walked slowly until she face to face with him. "Respect is not purchased with stolen money, Father, and surely you don't make people humiliating people you consider inferior." Detective Harrison finally approached. "Michael Patterson, you are arrested for misappropriation, fraud, money laundering, and fiduciary violation. As the handcuffs clicked on his wrists, Father Michael looked at Emma with pure and distilled hatred. You planned all this. You set me a trap." Emma shook her head with an impressive calm. "I didn't have to arm any tracks, Father. I just let you be exactly who you always went. A cruel man who can't see value in people different from him." She turned to the whole congregation. "The truth is that I could have arrested Father Michael 3 months ago. We had enough evidence, but I wanted you to see who he really is." The priest was escorted by federal agents, his clerical robes a cruel irony while he was taken by the central nave where minutes before he had tried to humiliate Emma publicly. When they arrived at the church door, Emma shouted, "Father Michael." He turned, waiting for a last humiliation. Instead, Emma said calmly, "I'm going to pray for you, really, because different from the Lord, I really believe in forgiveness." The whole church exploded in applause. People got up, some crying, some laughing with relief. David ran to Emma and hugged her strength. "So," Emma said, looking at Detective Harrison with a mischievous smile, "we still have a church available and a substitute priest on the way. Anyone here still wants to see a wedding?" 2 hours later, the St. Mary Church had been completely transformed. Father Michael was at the federal police station, giving testimony, and in his place was Father Thomas, a 35-year-old who had driven 3 hours since the neighboring city to perform the ceremony. Emma, now totally comfortable in her real role, was in the church's attached hall preparing to finally get married. David found her there, still processing everything that had happened. "So I'm marrying a federal agent who has just dismantled a corruption scheme in our own church," he said, shaking his head with admiration. "That's incredibly amazing." Emma laughed, straightening her dress. "Technically, I'm a forensic auditor, and technically, we're not yet married." David kissed her gently. "Emma Rodriguez, the most impressive woman I've ever met. Do you want to marry me?" "I thought I would never ask," she replied, smiling. When they returned to the main ship, the atmosphere was completely different. The same guests who had taken pictures of the humiliation now rose to applaud Emma. The same people who had muttered with contempt now looked at her with respect and genuine admiration. Mr. Thompson approached her. "Mrs. Rodriguez, on behalf of the whole diocese, I want to thank you in person. Your investigations have saved not only this church but probably dozens of families." Mrs. Williams added, "The money recovered. So far we have found 280,000 of the 340,000 stolen will be fully returned to victims. The Santos family has already been notified that it will receive $23,000 next week." Emma nodded gracefully, but kept her characteristic humility. "I was just doing my job. Justice for vulnerable families has always been my priority." Detective Harrison, who had remained in the church to witness the marriage, approached. "Emma, I need to tell you something. When we arrested Father Michael, he tried to do another bargain. He offered information about other corrupt priests in exchange for penalty reduction." Emma smiled with professional satisfaction. "And he didn't know that we had this information for months. His investigation was only the first domino of a much larger operation." Father Thomas, a kind man with a genuine smile, called everyone to the ceremony. "If everyone is ready, we will finally celebrate the love between Emma and David." When Emma walked through the central nave for the second time that day, everything had changed. The same guests who had witnessed his humiliation now applauded him standing. The same people who had taken cruel photos now photographed with respect and admiration. During the votes, David said, "Emma, today I learned that I fell in love not only with a wonderful woman but for a real heroine. You taught me that strength has nothing to do with look, and that intelligence is much more powerful than prejudice." Emma replied, "David, thank you for loving me exactly as I am, even before knowing who I really was. It showed me that you have the character I always searched for." When Father Thomas said, "You can kiss," the entire church exploded in genuine and thrilled applause. During the reception in the church hall, people lined up to talk to Emma. The same old lady who had muttered criticism during humiliation approached, tears in her eyes. "Honey, I need to apologize. I judged you completely wrong. You saved our church." Emma hugged you kindly. "Don't worry. We all judge through the eyes sometimes. The important thing is to learn." Later, when Emma and David cut the cake, Detective Harrison gave a toast for Emma Rodriguez, who reminded us that the most underestimated people are often the most powerful. 6 months later, Emma received a promotion to the Regional Director of Financial Investigations. His investigation in the St. Mary Church led to the arrest of 12 corrupt religious in 5 states and the recovery of more than $2 million. Father Michael was sentenced to 8 years in prison and full restitution. During the trial, when asked if he had something to say, he just muttered, "I should never have underestimated that woman." The St. Mary Church has been completely renewed with money recovered from investigations. A sign at the entrance says, "This church is open to all people, regardless of appearance, origin, or social condition." David and Emma bought a house near the church and became active members of the congregation. Emma often gives lectures on how to recognize signs of financial abuse in religious institutions, GIOSS, but the most powerful lesson Emma taught that day was not about investigation or justice. It was about a simple truth that many people forget. Never judge a person for their appearance because you never know who is really in front of you. The plus-size woman you despise may be the federal auditor that will investigate your crimes. The inferior person you humiliate can be exactly the person with power to change your life forever. Emma Rodriguez proved that the best revenge is not cruelty. It is simply being absolutely brilliant in what you do. Maintain your dignity and let justice speak for yourself. If you like this inspiring story about how arrogance always leads to fall and how we should never underestimate people for its appearance, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming injustice that will restore your faith in humanity.